This is the Throstle Club with Norman Bartlam and Bob Downing. Well, hello and welcome to the latest edition of the Throstle Club. Now, this is the programme which looks back on the long and illustrious history of West Bromwich Albion, and we speak to former players and supporters about their memories of our marvellous club, with a particular emphasis on this month in history, which of course is October. Now, sitting alongside me as usual is a man whose form rate apparently is always excellent, or so he says anyway. It's the former Sports Argus man, Bob Downing.
Hello, Norman.
Yeah, good to see you again. And sitting opposite, as always, is Black Country Radio's very own Billy Spakeman, who'll be chipping in with his own comments, and if you're a regular listener, you will know he sits there twiddling his knobs in the corner, helping,
always,
saying it
always.
keeps us on
I'm
air.
getting quite good at that.
Have you been okay then, Billy?
Yeah, not
Excellent.
too bad. Yeah.
Excellent. And our special studio guest between us today is a long-serving West Bromwich Albion fan and a man with a great name. You ready for this, Billy?
Yeah.
His name is Vaughan Williams.
Oh.
But that's a bit of
A few
posh.
tunes there then.
It certainly is. So nice posh programme today. So hello to you, Vaughan. So thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
And of course we're going to have loads to talk about then on this edition of the Throstle Club. And as always, it's the West Brom and the Albion Choir, which brings us into this edition of the Throstle Club. So, as I mentioned, our special guest is the man with a special name, Vaughan Williams. So, thanks for joining us, Vaughan.
Great pleasure.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself then.
Well, I've been a Baggies supporter since I was in
your old junior school days before you were
yeah.
kids, yeah?
Well, not in my junior school days. Since I was 30, I was 13 when I first saw the Albion play. That was against Portsmouth in 1956. I remember it well. At the Hawthorns, Albion won 4-0. Maurice Setters made his debut on that day, yeah. And once I saw those blue and white stripes, mate, I was hooked, and I've been hooked ever since.
So what was it got you into the Albion in the first place then?
Well, I just went with a mate. He'd been going regularly, and he said, "Come and have a bob's worth of this." So I did, and that was it. And strangely, I've got a twin brother, and he sadly went the other way, and he's always been a Wolves supporter. So there's been a certain amount of good-natured fisticuffs in our house all our lives. You know?
Unbelievable, isn't it? Amazing. Well, we'll talk to you at length throughout the programme today, and of course chip in with the comments as we're going along.
Okay.
But first of all, some of the things that have been happening since the last programme, Bob, and obviously it was we're recording this just ahead of the Middlesbrough game, post Sheffield Wednesday, and the very sad occurrence of the death of an Albion fan, Mark Townsend.
Yes. Yeah, I think everybody has been. They will be. Everybody at the Albion's been affected by it. Every Albion supporter was affected by it. It's tragic when you think of, a fella goes to a football match, and he don't go home. That it's raw. It's emotional. I think the club responded very well and very quickly. I mean, I think they announced on Sunday that the players are going to be wearing black armbands. And I think there was going to be some sort of minute's applause in the 57th minute, because that's how old the fella was, to have a minute's applause. Somebody said, it'd be a good idea if somebody was to kick the ball out on 57 minutes. So, they could stop and applaud, and the players could, join in as well.
That's interesting. We're recording this just ahead of the game, so obviously by time people listen to this, they will know whether they happened or not. Yeah,
but I mean, really, I would think everybody will know in the ground. Everybody will know in the ground. The Middlesbrough people will know about it, because it's been on the national news. So they will know. I'm sure they will join in if they have to. And there's a lot of questions got to be asked, obviously, still about about what happened, what actually happened. I think it's only fair the family are allowed to grieve, and we don't go into assumptions of what might have happened or what could have happened. But I do think that the Football League and the Premier League and football in general has got to look at this question about medical emergencies in grounds.
Yeah, I think, that goes without saying, I think. Yeah, we'll say no more on that because there's lots of questions about the speed, etc., of how it was handled at Sheffield Wednesday. But we'll say no more on that at the moment, I think, really. But as for the match itself, 2-0 down, got back to 2-2, and then stupidly gave it away right at the end.
Yeah, I mean, I think they said, you always say the most dangerous time is when you've just scored. And your concentration has probably got to go up a notch because you know full well they're going to try and get back quickly. And Albion lost the concentration. I was a little bit surprised, I must admit, with the team selection.
It was Mowat, wasn't it?
Mowat. I mean, he came on in the second half and the team changed.
Yeah.
No disrespect to the guy who took over. I can't even pronounce his name. Mm-hmm. But, I could understand maybe bringing him on as a substitute a bit later on and starting with Mowat.
Yeah.
But, that's Carlos. I mean, you can't criticise about the fella at the moment because he's doing no wrong.
Yeah, well,
I think that was a wrong decision.
Yeah, one of the arguments is if somebody like Mowat is fit enough to be on the bench, he's fit enough to start.
Precisely. I think. I mean, the other thing is, I think with his substitutions as well, I think he was starting to think about Middlesbrough on the Tuesday.
Yeah. So, but we're not doing bad. First defeat of the season, still top of the table at the time of recording this, of course. Yeah.
It's amazing, though, isn't it, Norm? When you think about it, we were top of the table, and then there was when we got beat, there was about 2 or 3 teams who could leapfrog above us, and none of them did.
Yeah.
Which I think just underlines how competitive and how closely knit that championship is.
Yeah.
You can't take anything for granted.
I'm just a bit worried about some of the younger supporters because of not being through the mill, as it were, over the years, already getting a bit excited and think, we're going to walk this league because we're doing well. And it's not going to be like that, is it?
No, it's not. You're not. Nobody's ever going to walk the championship. Never. Yeah. I know Ipswich did well last season, and the usual suspects are always going to be sort of talking about going up there, and getting in the. I mean, the first thing you've got to do is get into the playoffs, get into the playoff positions. Then after that, then you can start going, sort of automatic too.
Yeah.
But no, I think he started really well. The team started really well. Let's just keep our fingers crossed for the rest of the season.
Indeed, yeah. Now, last night, beginning of the month here, there was a fabulous meeting at the Hawthorns at the Albion Supporters Club AGM, which I know you were there as well. And it was very well attended. It was one of the best meetings I've ever been to, actually. Superbly hosted, of course, by John Homer, as you would expect. But it's also celebrating the 60 years since Jeff Astle was at the Albion, joining the Albion, and Lorraine, his wife, was there. And it's also 70 years since Graham Williams signed on for the Albion. And there was also another special guest, somebody I'd not met before, which was David Hagan, who was the son of Jimmy Hagan, the former Albion manager.
Yeah.
What about you, Vaughan? I know you weren't there at that meeting last night, but you've got some good memories of Jimmy Hagan, haven't you?
Well, I say some good memories of Jimmy Hagan. I actually remember him finishing playing, just about. And of course, when he came to the Hawthorns, it was the famous winter of discontent, when all the players virtually went on strike because he wouldn't let them. He wouldn't let them wear the tracksuits while they were training. The poor dears were frozen to death, and it didn't go down very well. Which is more than you can say about his car, which sometime later mysteriously found its way into the cut in West Bromwich.
Although we should make it clear, you're not suggesting there's any link whatsoever between the two incidents.
There is absolutely no link between the two instances whatsoever.
It was interesting when we were listening to what Danny Hagan was saying. Danny, was it?
Yeah, David.
David. What David Hagan was saying about the tracksuit furore that went on because the Albion players wanted to wear the tracksuit bottoms, but Jimmy Hagan, who was taking the training, was in his shorts.
All right.
And he thought,
Okay.
if I can wear shorts, they can wear
Do
shorts.
as I do.
Yeah.
Lead by example.
But I mean, it was interesting about the personality of the bloke. He was, I think they all agreed he could be very stubborn. He was very forthright in his views. You've got to do it his way. But when you think of the players he brought to the club, it was the nucleus of Albion going from the very successful 50s team to what became a very successful 60s and 70s team.
Yeah.
Because he'd bought John Osborne, he'd bought Brian Talbot, he gave debuts to quite a few players who went on to become, regular features. And I think Tony Brown he gave his debut to as well, didn't he? And look what he did. And he turned Tony Brown from a wing. It started off as a winger, and he changed him into a what we call now an attacking midfield player.
Mm-hmm.
And without making that switch for Tony Brown, how many goals would Tony Brown have scored? But it was fascinating. I can completely concur with what Norman said. It was a fabulous meeting. Some of the things that we learned about him, about Jeff, about that when he signed, that it wasn't cut and dried. It was, Jimmy Hagan who actually went to Notts County to watch Tony Aitley.
All right, yeah. I remember him, yeah.
Yeah. And then he came back and he said, I'm not too keen on this Tony Aitley, but that kid who was playing up front with him, this kid named Astle, he said, he interests me. And he went again to watch him. And the story, so that, Lorraine was telling us, it was, he spoke to Jeff and couldn't agree terms, and then he went back to the Albion and said, look, we've got to have him. We've got to have him. And they met the asking price and Jeff came. But I mean, that was just one little story for that day.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of that one about Jimmy Hagan a couple of times needing to go to watch him. Yeah, which was really interesting. And of course, we could have ended up with Tony Aitley.
Yeah,
who ended up going down to the somewhere in Aston.
Yeah, that little club in Aston. There you go up to the.
Be careful. Paul's in the other studio. He's Sports Villa.
Oh dear,
you might be listening.
Now, talking about rivalry, though, I had a little Dickie Bird tells me, Vaughan, that your brother's wasn't an Albion fan.
No,
he was a Wolves bloke. He still is a Wolves bloke, and of course we're old enough to remember the great Wolves teams of the 50s, and when the Wolves were sweeping everything before them at the end of the 50s, we used to go to the Wolves one week and the Albion the next, and if the Wolves didn't get 5 in those days, they had a bad day. I tell you, yes, there was the one match that upset me at that time, the Wolves Albion match. It was Christmas. No, it was Boxing Day. Boxing Day in 1962 or 63, and it was the Wolves against the Baggies at Molyneux, and by half-time it was snowing like the clappers, and it was abandoned, Wolves winning 2-0, so we thought we were pretty lucky to get away with that match abandoned. They played it again at the end of the season. It was 2-0 again to the Wolves half-time, and then they got 5 in the second half. And I can still remember that, and our kid has never let me forget it.
There's a great story about that first game. Say Albion 2-0 down, and when the game was abandoned to half time, but the referee had second thoughts apparently, and he decided that he wanted the second half to play. And Don Howe, who was the Albion captain at the time, got wind of this. And he dashed back into the dressing room and told the players to dive into the bath. So they were all in the bath. And some of them allegedly still got clothes on. The referee poked his head round the door and thought, oh, God, no, they're all in the bath now. So he did abandon the game. Yeah.
But, I mean, the amazing thing, and Vaughan, you obviously know this as well, when Jeff made his debut, I mean, he'd signed that day almost. Or probably the night before, And he went back home and he told Lorraine that he'd signed for the Albion. I know he said, I've got to go to Leicester tonight, I'm playing. So how did they get the registration through that quick? Was it telegram? I mean, now it's like, you've got to have them signed 48 hours before Christmas Day or something.
And we've got the modern technology to do things
Yeah.
instantly.
Yeah.
Brilliant. And Graham Williams as well, Vaughan, you'll have seen him play a good few times.
Graham Williams, I saw play loads of times, and I'll tell you what, he scored one of the best goals I ever saw at the Hawthorns against Leicester. The Albion beat Leicester 6-1 or 6-0, I can't remember. But Graham Williams stuck on him from about 25 yards, and Gordon Banks, or no Gordon Banks in goal, there was nobody going to stop it because it would have taken him with it. Absolute screamer at the Brummy end. Yeah, that sticks out. And also, I've got a friend in Bristol whose wife's hairdresser is Bobby Brown, who used to play for Bristol Rovers and Fulham. And last time I was down there, he told me that when Graham went to manage Weymouth, Bobby Brown was the first bloke that Graham signed for Weymouth. So it was a little personal touch for me there. That was a little story, yeah.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, some listeners may know I'm helping to compile a book at the moment about Graham Williams that will hopefully will be out for Christmas. So there's lots of stories about Graham, obviously, in that book, including how he went to Weymouth and also what happened to him where he played and managed overseas much later in his career after the Albion.
Oh, okay.
So we'll talk about that in a future programme as well. Any interesting stuff about Jeff Astle?
Jeff Astle, I'm going to rock the boat here. In my opinion, the second best goal scorer I ever saw at the Albion in my time.
Oh, hang on.
Whoa. Sorry
Hang
about
on. Just stop him. Is he allowed to say that, Billy?
Sorry about that.
Is he allowed to say that?
I mean, I'm not. I don't follow the Baggies that much, but I'm going to say I never rated him, but I didn't think he was good as everybody thought he was.
Right, come on.
He was all right with his head. He was all right with his head.
It'd still be in my all-time Albion 11, but my top player and my favourite all-time Albion player in any position was Derek the Tank Kevin, who played centre forward, as it would be in those days. They had him from Bradford or Bradford Park Avenue, and just after they won the Cup. He was there for about 8 seasons, and he was just a walking goal scorer. And he scored about, I think it was 157 goals in 252 games, something like that, which is a goal every other game, or 2 goals in 3 games. Which is going some. And I remember they played Everton. It would be about 1960. They played Everton at the Hawthorns, and they thumped them 6-2. And Kevin scored 5. Eat your heart out, Cole Palmer. Yeah, Kevin scored 5, and one of them, a header. He was in the D. Somebody crossed it, and it went in like a rocket. Fabulous player, Derek Kevin.
Yeah.
He'd be my twin striker with Astle in my all-time Albion 11.
It was interesting you saying about Derek, because I personally, I thought Derek Kevin was a great player, and he was amazing, really, because when I got his autograph, first of all, he was waiting for the bus outside Smethwick Park. He was in digs in Smethwick.
Yeah.
And but I always remember a story that my dad told me, and he must have read it somewhere, that when Bert Troutman came back after his broken neck, he said the one player he respected of all the players who he played against after was Derek Kevin, because he didn't give him an inch. He said, I needed to prove to myself that I could still do it. I could still go out in the penalty area and catch a ball and expect a thump. None of the other players wanted to give me a thump because of what had happened. apart from Derek
Derek
Kevan.
Kevan.
And he said, "Now, if it hadn't been for Derek Kevan, my career might have finished a lot earlier than it did."
Oh, there you go. I'll tell you another brief Bert Troutman story, if you like. Towards the end of the 50s, Albion drew City. It was the third round FA Cup match. And for some reason, I found myself on the Brummie Road. A bloke gave me a ticket, that's it. Bloke gave me a ticket. I was on the Brummie Road end. I normally went to Smethwick end. And it was a foggy day. And from behind the goal where I was, you could only see the halfway line. But the ref on the halfway line could see both goals. So the game went ahead. And in the first half, City scored at the Smethwick end in the fog, which couldn't be seen from the Brummie Road end. We're winning 1-0. They changed round. Albion scored at 5 in the second half at the Smethwick end in the fog. So there'd been 6 goals. Albion had won 5-1, and I hadn't seen one of them. True. And another city, one that springs to mind, and I remember this date, 21st of September, 1957, Albion versus Manchester City at the Hawthorns. Does anybody else remember that score? Albion
7-2.
Albion 9.
9-2.
Albion 9,
Yeah.
Manchester City 2. Now, Frank Griffin scored a hat-trick. Don Howe scored 2. Robson, 1 or 2 other blokes. But there's a chap where I live in the Beacon Centre, and he's a Manchester City supporter. So it's his birthday next week, so I've got him an Albion birthday card. And I've written on Albion 9, City 2. I was there. There you go.
What about all the others? They talk about Cyril and Bob Taylor and Bobby Gould and all that.
Well, that's an interesting one, how you would fit somebody like Cyril Regis in, comparing them to players of days gone by.
Great player and super Bobby Taylor. Bobby Taylor, not quite the class of the other blokes we're talking about, but you know, the Albion over the years have had some great centre forwards. Obviously, Ronnie Allen. I'll tell you who I liked briefly, Joe Mayo. You remember Joe Mayo?
Yeah.
Of course, Ray Crawford came. Bobby Gould. He'd win the world championship for missing goals under the crossbar. I think, Bobby Gould, yeah. But my front two in my all-time Albion 11 would be Astle and Kevin. Yeah, no doubt about it. Oh, and a brief Astle story. If I don't know if anybody's heard this one. Just after he signed for the Albion, he was still living up in Eastwood, wasn't it? In Nottinghamshire. Yeah. And he'd gone up in the world, and he bought himself an XJ6, a Jag, XJ6, and he was coming down the A38, and he had a puncture, and he had to get a new tyre, and it was in the Express and Star. Sorry, Bob. It was in the Express and Star. He'd had to buy a new tyre, which had cost him 20 quid, and I thought, oh my God, 20 quid for a tyre in 1970. What on earth is the world coming to? Yeah.
Brilliant. I think, if I remember correctly, Norm, from last night, didn't Lorraine say that they moved into Jimmy Hagan's house when he was sacked?
Yeah.
And they moved into a semi-detached place.
All right, okay.
Brilliant. Yeah. Right, well, I'll talk a little bit more in a bit about some of your memories as Vaughan as well. But let's look back on this month in history now, and let's go back 110 years.
Oh, God.
Now, I wasn't going to say, oh, God. I wasn't going to say the obvious. Do you remember it?
Listen, I'm only 81. I can go back most of them, but not that far.
But that occasion, it was one of the last games that Harold Bache played for the Albion when we beat Bradford Park Avenue. And he was the guy that went on to be killed in the First World War. So I've done lots of work about him, and he was going to be a fantastic player by all accounts. People talk about Jimmy Edwards, I was going to say then. Duncan Edwards, I was going to say.
Yeah.
Obviously from the 50s. But Harold Bates was sort of 40 years before that,
Mm-hmm.
and people of that era relate to him to say, you know, that's the kind of player that he could have been.
Isn't that the place where Blind Dave's been on the bike
I was
ride?
ju-
Oh
ju-
yes,
li-
he's gone along the Western Front, hasn't
Yeah.
he?
That's right. That's a fantastic piece of work that they've just done that for the Albion
Yeah.
Foundation.
Is that
Paul-
finished now?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
finished the other day. Paul Marden, of course, was a guest
Yeah.
on one of our programmes previously.
Yeah.
He also took part in that.
But they actually took Harold Bates' cap.
Oh, great.
Yeah, because all the Albion old former players,
Yeah.
when they can get in touch with them, they've got a cap that they've had made with, and then the number is the number of the they say Harold Bates was 12. It meant he was the 12th person to make his debut.
Okay.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
So we're up to the nearly 100. Well, we're into the hundreds now, but
I like the England cricket shirts.
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they took his cap to the memorial where he's buried
Yeah.
on the Western Front.
Lovely
Yeah.
thing to
Fantastic.
do, yeah.
Yeah, so that was a nice touch. That so obviously they were raising money for the Albion Foundation. Talking of which, a little plug for myself, if you don't mind. That by the time some of listeners will have heard this, I hopefully would have just come back from Jordan, where I'm going across next week with the Albion Foundation on the walk to Petra, raising money for the Albion Foundation.
Have you
which
got
is
your
great.
tin hat ready?
So there is the subject to the neighbours, of course, over there. Yeah, so we're raising money again for the Albion Foundation. So if anybody's got a few bob to spare, they don't mind sponsoring us, just go into the justgiving.com and search Norman Bartlam and put your fiver in or whatever, because it all adds up. So the idea of going to petrol I thought was quite a good idea at the start, but I thought Petra was the dog in Blue Peter. Anyway, 35 years ago, a bit more up to date here now for you two here. Bradford City away in the League Cup, 5-3 it was, and somebody mysteriously scored a hat-trick for Albion, which he never did again after that. He was from Wednesbury.
Alex Jackson?
Johnny T. John Thomas. Remember John Thomas? There was the chance for afterwards. Johnny T. from Wednesbury. He got a market stall in Wednesbury Market.
I don't remember that.
John Thomas.
What year was that? No.
So it was just a made-up one from the fans. Oh, Johnny T.
Oh,
or Johnny
right, okay.
T.
Yeah.
Johnny T. from Wednesbury, etc. But there we go. So you obviously well remember that one. So that was worth mentioning.
He made his mark.
I don't think Lennon and McCartney got anything to worry about.
No.
Right, now our first win of the season after 8 attempts was this month 20 years ago, October 2004. We beat Bolton, and it turned out to be Gary Megson's last win for the Albion. Carnu and Gira scored. Now both of those were good players, weren't they? I love Zoltan Gira.
Zoltan Gira was a good player. I like him. And I think I'm right in saying that Carnu was Albion's most used substitute.
Oh, was he?
I think
Ooh,
so.
great. You've got good facts there. You can come again. Yeah. Hang on, I'm writing that down. Most used sub. Yeah.
Came on the most times as substitute for Albion.
Yeah. Excellent. Right. Bit more from you a little bit later, but a little clip here now, which Bill is just going to play for us, and it's a good mate of mine called Jim Good, or Good if you overpronounce the E at the end of his name, and it was in October that he first ever came to watch the Albion, and he did it virtually by accident. So you might think, how the hell do you set off in the morning wanting to go and watch the Albion? So he wanted to go off and watch Walsall, which was his beloved Walsall. He ended up going to the Hawthorns instead, and this is why.
Yeah, it's Jim Good. I'm still chairman of the Walsall branch of the Albion Supporters Club. And the reason I do support the Albion is I grew up in Bloxwich, so of course following my dad, supported Walsall. And I went out, 1969, I went out to catch the bus to Fellas Park, as it was then. The bus was full. And behind it was, I don't know if anybody remember, Harper's Couches from Heath Hayes. And it had got Albion on the front, and the driver said, come on, because in them days you never wore your tops or nothing like that, did you? And I thought, I'll get on, make sure I get there. He's sure to stop in Walsall. and it never did. And it brought me right here to the
First the
Hawthorns.
Albion,
Yes, yeah. And I mean, if I remember right, it was Leeds, and it was one each. I don't know if I still scored the goal. And I was hooked because I know nothing like this place. With Walsall, they had some great years at Walsall, like in the late 50s and early 60s, but nothing like coming here. And in the following Tuesday, I think they played Tuesday or Wednesday, they played Bradford in the League Cup and won 4-1.
And after that, you were hooked on the Albion? Then?
Yes.
So fantastic! That's the way to get hooked on the Albion. So you go out, set off in the morning to go and watch Walsall, get on the wrong bus, and end up at the Albion and never go to Walsall again. It's absolutely fantastic. Right, we're going to talk a little bit more to Vaughan Williams in a minute, but hang on a minute. We'll be hearing more from Vaughan Williams. Is that a lark I hear ascending? No, it's not a lark, it's a throstle.
Boom, boom.
This is the Throstle Club with Norman Bartlam and Bob Downing. There you are. I told you it was a throstle. Hey, so there we go. But now, this is it. This is the moment you haven't been waiting for. It's the Quiz of the Week.
Hey.
Right, it's not live from Norwich, but we've got the knowledge. It's the Quiz of the Week. So shout out the answers. So it's Bob versus Vaughan.
Oh, blimey.
So
Okay.
just shout out the answers. Okay, 10 questions we'll go for. See how we go on time. So number 1, in October 1954, Albion played which Hungarian side, which the Wolves had done?
Honved.
Honved.
Ooh, Bob's in there.
One to
If you
Bob.
give me a second, Bob, I'd have got that. Don't I get a pensioner's time?
Time out.
Right, shout out the answers. Number 2, in October of which year did Brian Robson leave the Albion for Manchester United?
83.
Just before?
82.
81.
81.
Oh,
81.
okay.
Yeah, 81. Excellent. Right, which goalkeeper made his Albion debut in October 1965?
1965. Jim Coombs.
No,
Ray Potter.
before that. No, slightly less well known than that.
Rick Shepherd.
Rick Shepherd,
Oh.
indeed. Excellent. Good one to you there, Vaughan.
He was the one who had that like weird haircut, didn't he?
It was a bit like mine,
He
actually.
was a bit like a model when
Yeah.
he'd come on and he'd be like
Yeah.
So am
pouncing
I.
around.
Yeah.
Sorry, Rick, if you're still there.
I'm sure, yeah. Oh, well, there we go. Anyway, right, number 4. Who made his Albion debut in October 1970, having been signed from Alan Ashman's old side, Carlisle United?
George
George
McVitie.
McVitie.
George McVitie, yes, another one to Vaughan.
I think there's one each there. They were right on the
Was
money
it? Were
there.
you in there as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
And giving them one each. I'm trying to be fair here, you know. You know what I mean?
Right, number 5. Ron Atkinson left West Bromwich Albion when October 88, one of the times. So which former Ipswich and Arsenal guy was caretaker manager then?
Was it Talbot?
Talbot,
Yeah.
it was
Ooh.
indeed. Brian Talbot. Excellent. Number 6. Who scored his 209th Albion goal in October 78?
Tony Brown.
Tony Brown. Yes,
Oh, hey,
indeed.
come on, Vaughan. Give us a chance.
Breaking whose record?
Ronnie Allen's.
Ronnie Allen.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well done, yeah.
Right,
I like the way he said that. I'm going to give him 2 for
You're
that.
going to give him 2
Yeah,
for that,
very much
okay.
so,
Right, number 7. In October 1985, Johnny Giles resigned as Albion manager. But who was the former World Cup winner who took over as the caretaker manager?
Idealers.
No, before that, because this is 85.
85, yeah.
England, former World Cup.
For a World Cup.
He was an assistant to Johnny Giles.
Nobby Stiles.
Nobby
No,
Stiles,
Stiles.
indeed. Another one to
Was
Vaughan.
he a manager?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was
Yeah.
he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay.
There we go. Number 8. In October 1978 in the UEFA Cup, which team did Albion play from Portugal?
Sporting Braga.
Sporting Braga, Sporting Lager he was
yeah.
going to say then, wasn't
Would
it?
never
How
have
many,
got
how
that.
many questions we got left?
Sporting Braga. 2 to go.
Oh, to go on. There's a
Well,
point
how,
in it.
How are we doing?
6 to B, 5 to B.
Ooh,
I'll
here we go.
Play for the draw.
Yeah.
Right,
Park the bus.
Park the bus.
exactly 30 years ago this month, Why did Albion play their league games, all their league games, away from home?
The redevelopment of the ground.
Good, the redevelopment of the ground.
So one to go and we
All
tie
one to
in.
go.
Yeah.
Dun, 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 dun.
Don't let them in
And-
now, Vaughan. You know, it's the last few minutes. Keep your
October
concentration.
1957, the new floodlights were switched on, and Albion played a team from which country to celebrate?
It was CSKA Sofia.
From which country?
Oh, country. Hungary? No.
Czechoslovakia.
Czechoslovakia?
No.
No.
It's
Come on.
Is it the
Come on.
right team?
it's
This is a lot at stake here. Right, which
Prague?
No,
No.
I don't. I need to speed you up because I don't want to rush.
Russia?
Russia, yeah,
Oh.
Russia.
Oh.
Sofia in Russia. There you go.
No.
So it's Bulgaria or something. Which is the Moscow's team, wasn't it?
CSKA, yeah.
So Bob's won by 1 point.
Whoa.
All right. Well,
But if we deduct the double point, it's a
It's
draw.
a draw.
Right, so,
It's a draw.
Shall we call it? We'll call that
Yeah,
a draw.
draw.
Call it a
Let's
draw?
draw.
Okay.
We'll call that
Call
a
it a
draw.
draw.
well done, Bob.
Well done, Vaughan.
I was going to say you all round, but there you go.
It's all about you. Black Country Extra.
There we are then. You're listening to the Throstle Club on Black Country Extra, and at various times you can also hear it on Black Country Radio and later on my own website, tntnews.co.uk. And also, if that's not enough, you can get us on podcast form as well, on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and wherever you can get anything. Get them on Apple, anything these days, can't you, Bob?
Yeah.
You've been a big whiz kid up there, nodding your head sagely there. There we go. Right, our special guest today then is Vaughan Williams. So I think we could mention this at this stage to our listeners that you've actually lost your sight a few years ago.
That is so, yes.
Yeah, but that obviously hasn't deterred you to still supporting and listening in the Albion as much as you can.
No, I'll listen now instead of watch. Simple.
Yeah. So your blindness came on gradually, and you've been blind permanently blind for the last few years.
I've been without any sight for about 3 years. It came on about 20 years ago, and I had multiple corneal grafts and trips down to Moorfields Hospital in London, but eventually glaucoma got a firm grip on me, and that was kiss me hardy. So it's just a case of accepting it and adapting your life to get on with it. I live in the Beacon Centre for the Blind in Sedgley, whose raison d'etre really is to look after people like me, and I scrub along okay now, thanks, yeah.
So on a match day then, so what's your routine? You can listen in on not Radio Throstle, I call it Radio Albion now,
Yeah.
don't they?
Yeah.
But lots of local radio stuff anywhere these days, so there's always somewhere where you can listen to the match, I think, isn't there?
More or less, yeah.
Yeah, so is that what you tend to do?
Yes, I do, yeah. I got Sheffield Wednesday yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Sunday, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. But now you mentioned Moorfield Hospital there. Very famous incident in 1967 ended up with a player going to Moorfield Hospital.
Oh, who was
Do you
that?
remember that? Graham Williams.
Did he really?
Yeah, the famous League Cup debacle against Queen's Park Rangers when he got smacked in the eye by Lazarus.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the referee refused to let him go off. He said, I couldn't see, I'd lost my sight completely in one eye at that time. And then it was double vision and the trainer wouldn't come on. And of course, still in those days, trainers weren't quite so sophisticated, shall we say, as they are
Yeah,
today.
yeah.
Just a sponge.
So the Sponge Man came on. I think it was Albert McPherson.
Yeah, remember him? Yeah,
Yeah.
Albert McPherson. Yeah.
He came on with the sponge and dabbed his eyes and said, "You look all right to me." And Graham said, "I can't see properly. And the referee, for some strange reason, thought he wanted to go off. And he said, "The only reason you're going to go off is if I send you off, and I ain't sending you off." So he sent Albert McPherson off, and Graham had to play on, and he
the end of the
he
game.
blames himself for not playing well throughout the second half, and ultimately, of course, we lost the League Cup final that day.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
I
But,
was there, not at Moorfields Hospital, but I was at Wembley on the disastrous day.
yeah, that third goal would never have stood, would it, Vaughan, today?
Graham Williams would have headed it down.
Yeah, so Graham was taken off to Moorfields Hospital, and he spent a week in hospital.
Did he?
Having treatment.
right.
So that could have been a lot more dangerous in the
Yeah,
end if he
yeah.
had to been treated than he actually was. So you were there then for 67. Were you there at Wembley for 68?
I wasn't. I was promised a ticket by a bloke, and then 2 days before it, he gave it his boss. Ever heard of such a toad? I've never spoken to him since.
Shall we trash him on radio?
Yeah.
What's his name?
What's his name?
Where's
No,
he live?
My lips are sealed.
Your lips are sealed.
But I was there 2 years.
We know who you are. We're coming for you.
Yeah, I was there 2 years later in 1970 for the next one when again, unfortunately, we lost to Manchester City.
That's right, yeah.
But it just goes to show between 66 and 70, I mean, the Albion really were the preeminent cup
That's right.
team
yeah.
in the country, weren't they?
I always remember it at the banquet after the cup final at the Park Lane, which I was invited
Look at
to.
him. Look at the banquet. The banquet.
Which I was, I was invited after.
He was outside with his autograph.
And Jim Gordon got up, and they were saying, he said, I just want to say one thing. I'm fed up of winning cups. Let's win the title.
Yeah, which wasn't the best of things to have said, was it, in the circumstances?
Ten Hag said that, this week.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, Jordan Bennett.
Just
yeah.
thinking the same.
So excellent stuff there. Then another big trip we had to Wembley. What was much later then? After that, it wasn't until 1993 for the playoff game against Port Vale. Did you go to that, Vaughan?
I didn't. No, I wasn't there.
You
no.
weren't there. Were you there for that, Bob?
Yeah.
And that was a
But I wasn't there. I wasn't. That was the only time
Was it a banquet?
following Albion. The only time following Albion, I had to pay for a ticket.
Oh, dear.
You poor soul. Shall we have a whip
Talk,
round for you?
talk about a certain Prime Minister getting bums.
Exactly. Yeah. Hey, I've noticed he's got a new
Friends in
jumper
high
on
places.
today.
Oh,
Yes,
no.
I wonder who paid that for.
Very
him.
fetching.
Yeah. But I don't stop pensioners having winter fuel allowance.
Of course, another playoff occasion was the 06-07 season, wasn't it? When we played the Wolves 5 times that season.
Yeah.
We beat them at home in the league. They beat us at Molineux in the league. Then we played them in the FA Cup at Molineux and won 3-0. And then we played them in the playoffs. We won both games for an aggregate of 4-2. So that was 4 games out of 5 we beat them. And then sadly we lost to Derby.
Yeah.
In the the playoff final.
That was very, very sad there.
But it was great to stuff the Wolves 4 times in one season.
Well, For when they played Derby, I was in Alicante on holiday, and I went into a bar to watch the fight, the playoff final against Derby. And I went into this bar thinking, I better get there early because there was me and a West Bromwich fireman in there.
And he went at half time.
And he went at half time.
Albion went to blazes anyway.
Boom, boom.
Yeah.
Oh, dear. Now that Derby game was quite sad for me because that was the last. Although I didn't know it at the time, that was the last game I took my dad to. Which was so I've got a nice picture of him there. At that. Yep. So you've been to a few grounds. So Wembley, obviously. So how do you reckon Wembley had changed then? What about the atmosphere?
Wembley, I've been to more times than I've had hot dinners. Several cup finals. In the 70s and 80s, particularly, my dear late wife and I, we used to go down to all the England internationals, and from school we used to take the kids down to the schoolboy internationals. That sort of sort of thing. But the biggest regret, never seen Albion running around Wembley with the cup. You know, that's the yardstick.
I know you've been, you've been to, I think, all the grounds in the Football League.
Correct.
Vaughan.
Yeah.
What would you rate the highest, and what would you rate the lowest, in terms of atmosphere, in terms of attendance, in terms of whatever?
Facilities,
Yeah.
Well, my outstanding memory was when I did number 92, which ground number 92 was Halifax Town, and my dear late wife, unbeknownst to me, in advance had contacted the ground, and they'd got a fellow waiting for us when we got there. We were taken into the director's box, no less, and we were given the VIP treatment to watch the match. We went into the lounge at half time for drinks and nibbles, and then we were into the lounge after the match as well. With they played Aldershot. Halifax won, Aldershot won, and the Aldershot directors were in there as well, and they got me a programme which they sent off to be autographed by both sets of players, and I've still got that now. Brilliant. And I just wondered if it had been, say, Arsenal number 92 on my list, whether I would have had the same same sort of treatment. Yeah.
So what about your best grounds that you've been to, then your worst?
The one or two, I remember going to Darlington one cold winter's night, and there were about 300 people on there, and it was a dire match. I can't remember. It was Darlington against another, and at one point a dog trotted onto the pitch and cocked his leg up against the post, and the chant was "Super Dog." Super Dog. That was the highlight of the evening for the Darlington supporters. Yeah.
And some of the worst facilities that you've been to?
I remember going to Port Vale. I think they must have been in the second division because they were playing Chelsea. And Port Vale was a big ground then. I think it still is. And asking a police officer outside, which was the best place for visiting supporters to go, and he said, "Depends whether you want your teeth rearranging or not." so that didn't look too promising in Port Vale. So, no, I'd be careful.
Yeah, it's still like that today. Yeah. Yeah, some of the players we were talking about just before we came on air now, you're very good at reminiscing about different players, aren't you? You've got your all-time favourite team, I think, haven't you?
Yeah, I have. Do you want me to trot that out? Yeah, I've thought about, and everybody picks their all-time favourite teams from their club, don't they? And the biggest problem I had was with the goalkeeper, because they've had so many over the years, Norman Heath, Sanders, Ray Potter, John Osborne, Jim Coombs, Tony Godden, Peter Latchford, Rick Shepherd. We could go on. But eventually, I decided on Thomas Kushak, who wasn't at the Albion very long. And then he went to United, where he had a short but quite spectacular career, didn't he?
Yeah.
And then, this is me 4-4-2, right? My back four would be Don Howe, John Weil, Joe Kennedy from the 50s, who was a great centre-half, Derek Statham, my left back, wonderful player. My middle four would probably be controversial. I loved Willie Johnston. Who played on the left wing for the Albion. But I've got to have Chippy Clark, so my middle four would be Willie Johnston on the right, Brian Robson, Johnny Giles, centre midfield on the left. I never realised what a good player he was till he came to the Hawthorns. And Chippy Clark on the left wing. 28 goals from the left wing. He scored the season they won the cup. Never had a sniff of an England cap, Clive Clark. Awful. And my front two, Big Jeff and Derek Kevin, of course. And my number one player of all time. Hard luck on Ray Barlow, Laurie Cunningham, Cyril Regis.
No Bobby Hope.
Bobby Hope would be on the Judy, as they say these days. Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
Just think of that bench as well. How many good famous names would be on that bench as well.
Yeah, Ronnie Allen, Ray Barlow.
Yeah.
The 3 Degrees.
Yeah.
Yeah, excellent. So that midfield, it seems fantastic to me. Willie Johnston, Brian Robson, Johnny Giles, Chippy Clark, because I saw all those play. You knew Johnny Giles, of course, Bob.
Yeah, very well. Yeah, he's. I still see him. I saw him last week. Actually, he was at the hub for the Memories group.
He said, "I'll have a cup of tea, please." He thought he was the waiter coming around.
But no, I mean it's interesting. I mean, when Albion players are on forums, and they're always asked who's your best manager, and they all say to a man, Johnny Giles.
Do they really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
So you would have Giles for your manager, would you, Vaughan?
Big Ron. I'd have Big Ron. I love Big Ron. I think he was sort of the Donald Trump of the football league, wasn't he? Yeah.
But slightly more believable.
Yes, slightly more credible.
More cred.
No,
yeah.
but over the years, how much time can I rattle on?
Yeah, keep going. Yeah.
You know, I think I'm 81, and I've seen a lot of great players. I saw Stanley Matthews and Tom Finney play for England. I saw Billy Wright, Duncan Edwards, John Charles. I saw in his pomp. The whole of the England World Cup 11, plus the great Jimmy Greaves. Saw Beckenbauer, Pelé, Michel Platini. You know, there's a few to pick from there.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, since I lost my sight, and when it wasn't very good, even before I went blind, I'm not too well up on the current crop of players. Certainly not well enough to be able to give an assessment as to their playing abilities from my own judgment. You know, generally.
Yeah.
But I'll listen. I'll listen a lot.
It's interesting, with Johnny Giles, because the one thing that always comes out at these forums is that when Johnny came, he told you if he wanted something, sort of to tell you something, to do something, go and play in a certain way. He only told you 3 times. If he had to tell you the 4th time, you'd gone.
You'd gone. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And that happened to a couple of the players.
Yeah.
Where they were playing, they played down the channels, and he said to him, "Look, don't play down the channel. Don't you doing that. Look for me. I shall always be there. Somebody will always be there. We keep the ball. They can't score."
Yeah.
And this certain player, time and again, went down the channels, and he told him once, "Don't do it." He told him the second time, "Don't do it," and the 3rd time he was on the transfer list.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Yep. Now, one thing that we haven't mentioned yet is that, Bob, little do you realise, and you listen to this, Billy, that Vaughan may well have been the England manager.
This is true.
You applied for the job, didn't you?
I certainly did.
Go on, tell us all about it then.
I certainly did. This was 1973. Alf Ramsey was manager of the England team at the time, and England had got to qualify for the World Cup in Germany in 1974, and to do that, they'd got to beat Poland at Wembley, and I was there. But they didn't manage to beat Poland at Wembley. It was a 1-1 draw. A lot of people remember the performance of the Polish goalkeeper. Tomaszewski.
Isn't that what Brian Clough called
the
him?
clown.
The clown, didn't he?
Yes, he's a clown, Brian. So England failed to qualify for the 74 World Cup, and Alf Ramsey was given his cards. So I was in the noble teaching profession at the time, and one lunchtime shortly afterwards in the staff room, one of the blokes was reading the Daily Mirror. These were in the days when teachers had time to read the newspaper at lunchtime. He's reading the Daily Mirror, and he said, "Hey, Vaughan," he said, "there's a job here for you." and he read it out, and it said, the Football Association seek applicants for the post of England team manager. Apply to 1 Lancaster Gate or wherever it was. And that was an advert for the England team manager's job in the employment section in the Daily Mirror. Absolutely true. So I thought, I'll have a bash
Did
at
it
that.
say experience needed?
It didn't. No, it didn't. It didn't say suitably qualified. But so I wrote off, and I said that I'd never played the game professionally, but I'd played to a fairly high standard as an amateur player. I once played for the Leopard pub in King Swinford. That was it. And that I trained and coached a lot of junior teams, and that I've been on all 92 Football League grounds, which I thought that'll swing it if nothing else does.
Yeah.
So I sent off my application, and in due course I got a letter back from the FA. I've got it here with me now.
Yeah. So just to cut in there, the brilliant letter, because we're coming to the end of the programme now, unfortunately. But you got a letter back signed by Ted Croker, the big FA chief at the time, wasn't he? It says, "Dear sirs, thank you for your recent application, and I regret it's not possible for the Football Association to consider your application, but would like to take the opportunity of thanking you for your interest. Yours faithfully, Ted Croker, Secretary, FA." Brilliant. May 1974.
There you go.
So just think what it could have been now.
Well, of course, I was really disappointed because the blokes up for the shortlist were Brian Clough, Malcolm Allison, and Don Revie.
Oh, you were miles better than all of them.
Miles better than all them, but Revie got the job, you see.
Yeah.
I could have been in Saudi making millions like him now. There you go.
Brilliant. Right, there we are. Listen, we could have gone on for much, much longer, I reckon. I think you'll have to come again.
Okay.
Come back again in the new year, perhaps. But so that's been really brilliant.
Does
really some excellent stuff today. Really enjoyed
Fantastic
it.
show.
You as well, Billy. Yeah, I think you were sitting there smiling.
We'll
away.
move this one over.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. It's been great meeting
Absolutely.
everybody.
It's been absolutely brilliant listening to you. And I'm sure everybody who listens to this programme will think the same.
Yeah,
You've got a fountain of knowledge about the Albion.
None of which is worth knowing.
You're a great supporter, and I've thoroughly enjoyed sitting alongside you today.
Well, that's very nice of you. Thank you. I've enjoyed being here.
Right, so there we are. Thanks ever so much. I've enjoyed sitting alongside you as well, of course, goes without saying, doesn't it? So thank you very much to everybody in the studio. Thanks for listening. See you again soon. This is the Throstle Club with Norman Bartlam and Bob Downing.
Live from the Black Country, online, on your mobile.